If you've ever walked into a room where grief hangs heavy in the air, but an even heavier cloud of judgment follows you, then you understand exactly what I felt that gloomy Tuesday morning. My name is Lily, and I was at my grandmother Alara's funeral, a place that should have offered solace, but instead became the stage for a vicious character assassination. The deceased, my beloved Grandma Alara, was the only person in my family who truly saw me, truly valued me, and now, even in death, her peace was being disturbed by the very person who had always sought to undermine me, my Aunt Carol. The air in the funeral home was thick with the scent of lilies and sorrow. Grandma Alara had been a formidable woman, a quiet force of nature who loved fiercely and lived authentically. She wasn't rich by my family's standards, but she possessed a wealth of wisdom, kindness, and an unwavering moral compass. She had been my rock, my confidant, the only adult who consistently saw past my quiet demeanor to the intelligent, capable young woman beneath, my own parents, preoccupied with their social climbing and the achievements of my more outwardly charismatic cousins, often overlooked me, but Grandma Alara never did. As I stood by her casket, a wave of profound grief washed over me. She was gone. The world felt a little colder, a little less understanding without her in it. I wiped a stray tear from my cheek, trying to compose myself amidst the hushed murmurs of the mourners. That's when I heard it, a low conspiratorial whisper. Just a few feet away, my Aunt Carol, my mother's older sister, was holding court near a floral arrangement. Her voice barely audible, yet piercingly clear to my heightened senses. Carol was a woman who thrived on gossip and drama, a master of subtle manipulation, always quick to judge and quicker to condemn. She had always disliked me, viewing my quiet nature as suspicious and my unconventional career choices as a personal affront. Honestly, Carol was saying to a distant cousin, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. It's just tragic how some people take advantage of the elderly. Poor Alara, in her last years, so trusting. She paused, glancing pointedly in my direction, then lowered her voice further. Though I still caught every word, Lily was always around. Wasn't she always helping Grandma? Always so attentive, made you wonder if she had ulterior motives. Some people are just so opportunistic. A hot wave of humiliation and fury washed over me, eclipsing my grief for a moment. Opportunistic me, the accusation burned, a grotesque distortion of my genuine love and care for Grandma. I had spent countless hours with her, not seeking personal gain, but simply cherishing her company, listening to her stories, learning from her wisdom. I helped her with her gardening when her back gave out, ran errands when she couldn't drive, and spent evenings just talking, truly connecting. Grandma had been isolated by many in our family, seen as old-fashioned, or just a means to an end. I was one of the few who sought her company for pure affection. Yet here was Aunt Carol, at Grandma's funeral, painting me as a conniving gold digger. It wasn't surprising, but it still hurt. Carol had always delighted in spreading nasty rumors about me, fueled by a deep-seated resentment that I had never quite understood. Her whispers were like poison, designed to tarnish my reputation, to isolate me further within the already distant family. And her career, Carol continued, her voice rising slightly in mock indignation. A freelance artist, really no stability, no proper job, always looking for the easy way out. I bet she was hoping Alara would bail her out, give her a big inheritance to fund her little hobby. This was another familiar jab. I was a freelance graphic designer, specializing in digital art and branding for small businesses. It was a challenging, rewarding career that allowed me creative freedom and a comfortable, if not extravagant, income. I was entirely self-sufficient, had no debt, and prided myself on my independence, but to Carol and much of my family, anything outside the traditional corporate path was a hobby, a sign of laziness or a failure to achieve real success. My choice to pursue a creative field, rather than something stable and respectable, like a doctor or a lawyer like my successful cousin. David, whom my parents endlessly lauded, was a constant source of their derision. The whispers spread like wildfire through the small gathering. Heads turned, eyes darted to me, then to Carol. then back to me, filled with a mixture of curiosity, judgment, and outright suspicion. My parents, who were standing closer to the casket, seemed oblivious, or perhaps unwilling to intervene. They rarely defended me from Carol's attacks, often viewing them as just family drama, or even subtly agreeing with Carol's underlying criticisms of my life choices. I remembered countless past incidents where Carol's venom had struck. When I bought my first modest apartment, a small but charming space I had saved diligently for, Carol had cornered my mother at a family gathering. Honestly, Clara, a place that small doesn't Lily worry about her image. She needs to aim higher, so much potential, but always settling for less. When I opted out of a lucrative, but ethically questionable, corporate job offer to pursue freelancing full-time, Carol had openly scoffed. She'll be bankrupt in a year. Who does she think she is? A starving artist, she's so irresponsible. It was never about genuine concern. It was always about control, about diminishing me, about reinforcing her own perceived superiority. I had a quiet, introverted nature, which they often mistook for weakness or lack of ambition. Carol, on the other hand, was loud, opinionated, and aggressively social, qualities my family seemed to admire as signs of strength and confidence. But Grandma Alara, Grandma had seen through it all. She saw my quiet determination, my artistic talent, my integrity. She understood my independent spirit. She was the one who bought me my first drawing tablet, nurturing my early interest in digital art. Despite my parents' insistence that I focus on more practical subjects, she would secretly commission small pieces from me, insisting on paying me full market rate, subtly bolstering my confidence and validating my artistic pursuits. Lily, she'd told me once, her eyes twinkling over a cup of herbal tea. Talent is a gift, but character is a choice, and you, my dear, have both in spades. Don't let anyone dim your light, especially those who prefer to live in shadow. Her words were a balm, a quiet defiance against the constant barrage of criticism from my aunt and the subtle neglect from my parents. The funeral service proceeded, a somber blur, through the eulogies and hymns. Carol's whispers still stung, echoing in the back of my mind. I forced myself to focus on Grandma, on the beautiful memories, on the love we shared. I clung to the thought of her unwavering belief in me, a stark contrast to the venomous lies being spread by my aunt. As the ceremony concluded, and mourners began to disperse, a hush fell over the room as a tall, impeccably dressed man stepped forward. It was Mr. Thompson, Grandma Alara's longtime lawyer. He was a man of quiet dignity, known for his meticulous attention to detail and his unwavering integrity. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Thompson announced, his voice clear and resonant. "I understand this is a time of great sadness, however, as per Mrs. Alara Vance's express wishes. Her last will and testament will be read immediately following the funeral service, here in this very room, for all direct family members present." A ripple went through the small crowd. My parents exchanged surprised glances. Aunt Carol, who had been whispering almost gleefully about my scandalous behavior, instantly straightened up, her eyes gleaming with a new, avaricious light. The air, already heavy with grief, now thrummed with thinly veiled anticipation and greed. The whispers about my alleged opportunistic behavior momentarily subsided, replaced by a new, more potent speculation: the inheritance. I watched as family members quickly shuffled back into their seats, their faces a mixture of solemnity and barely concealed excitement. It was a grotesque transformation. Grief evaporated, replaced by avarice. My stomach churned. I just wanted to leave, to mourn Grandma in peace, away from the prying eyes and calculating minds of my relatives. But I knew I had to stay, for Grandma, for myself. Aunt Carol, meanwhile, had managed to secure a seat directly opposite me, her eyes fixed on Mr. Thompson, a smug, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She shot me a condescending glance, as if to say, "Your little game is over, Lily." Grandma saw right through you. She was clearly convinced that her relentless whispering campaign had been successful, that she had poisoned the family against me, ensuring my exclusion from any significant inheritance. Mr. Thompson picked up a thick, leather-bound document. Adorned with an official seal, he cleared his throat. Before I begin reading Mrs. Vance's last will and testament, he stated, his gaze sweeping over the assembled family, I must first read a personal letter from Mrs. Vance herself, addressed to all of you. A collective murmur of surprise went through the room. A letter? This was highly unusual. Aunt Carol's smug smile faltered slightly. Mr. Thompson put on his reading glasses, and his voice, which had been purely professional, now took on a poignant, almost solemn tone as he began to read Grandma's words. To my dearest family, if you are hearing this, it means I have passed on from this world. I hope you remember me with fondness, and that my passing brings you not just sorrow, but also a renewed appreciation for life's precious moments. I have lived a full life, built on values of integrity, hard work, and genuine connection. And in my passing, I wish for my legacy to continue to reflect those values. His voice paused, then continued, with a subtle shift in tone, becoming sharper, more direct. I have observed each of you throughout your lives. I have seen your strengths and your weaknesses. I have seen those who built with their own hands, and those who preferred to take. I have seen those who loved me for who I was, and those who loved me for what I had. Aunt Carol visibly stiffened. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The air in the room grew thick with unspoken tension. Grandma's words, even from beyond the grave, carried immense power. I have heard the whispers, Mr. Thompson read on, his gaze unwavering. The judgments, the assumptions, especially those made about certain individuals who, through no fault of their own, were often misunderstood or unfairly maligned. I want to make it unequivocally clear that my will reflects my true intentions, based on a lifetime of careful observation and a deep understanding of each of your characters. His eyes, then, fixed directly on Aunt Carol, and then, briefly, on me. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but it was not of fear. It was of dawning realization. Grandma had known. She had known about Carol's rumors. She had known everything, and she had prepared for it. The stage was set, not just for a reading of a will, but for a public reckoning. My aunt spread nasty rumors about me at a funeral, but the deceased's will was about to be read aloud, and I had a chilling feeling it was going to expose far more than just Grandma's final wishes. If you've ever found yourself in the crosshairs of a family drama, longing for justice, hit that like and subscribe button, because this story is about to take a turn you won't believe. The hushed tension in the funeral home was palpable as Mr. Thompson's voice continued to resonate. Reading Grandma Alara's personal letter, every word was a revelation, a carefully aimed arrow piercing the facade of my family's polite grief. When he spoke of those who built with their own hands and those who preferred to take, Aunt Carol visibly flinched. When he mentioned those who loved me for what I had, my mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Grandma, even in death, was orchestrating a truth serum, forcing them to confront their own shallow motivations. If you've ever sat in a room where someone is being exposed, and you know it's deserved, there's a strange mix of vindication and discomfort. I felt both. My heart pounded, but it wasn't from fear. It was from a profound sense of validation. Grandma knew. She had seen through their charade, their relentless pursuit of her wealth, their thinly veiled contempt for me, and she was laying it all bare. As Mr. Thompson continued, he moved from Grandma's general observations to more specific and damning allusions. I have heard the whispers, he read, his gaze unwavering. The judgments, the assumptions, especially those made about certain individuals who, through no fault of their own, were often misunderstood or unfairly maligned. I want to make it unequivocally clear that my will reflects my true intentions, based on a lifetime of careful observation and a deep understanding of each of your characters. His eyes, then, fixed directly on Aunt Carol, and then, briefly, on me. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but it was not of fear. It was of dawning realization. Grandma had known. She had known about Carol's rumors. She had known everything, and she had prepared for it. The stage was set, not just for a reading of a will, but for a public reckoning. My aunt spread nasty rumors about me at a funeral, but the deceased's will was about to be read aloud, And I had a chilling feeling it was going to expose far more than just Grandma's final wishes. The sting of Aunt Carol's whispers at the funeral was nothing new. It was merely the latest installment in a lifetime of her insidious attacks, each one designed to diminish me, to make me feel less than. Her resentment towards me was a constant hum in the background of my life, a low-grade fever that occasionally flared into open hostility. To understand Carol's venom, you have to understand the family dynamic. My grandmother, Alara, was a self-made woman. She came from humble beginnings, fought for every inch of her success, and built a comfortable life through sheer grit and intelligence. My mother, Alara's daughter, was more conventional, focused on outward appearances and social standing. And then there was Carol, my mother's older sister. Carol had always been the golden child in her own immediate family, lauded for her beauty and her social graces. But when it came to Grandma Alara, Carol always felt she was second best to my mother, and certainly to me, a fact she deeply resented. Carol believed that inherited wealth and social connections were the true measures of success. She married a wealthy, albeit dull, man and spent her life cultivating an image of effortless sophistication, despite her own deep-seated insecurities. My choice to pursue a career as a freelance graphic designer, a path that offered creative freedom but lacked the prestige of a corporate ladder, was a constant source of derision for her. "Lily, darling," she'd coo at family gatherings, her voice laced with mock concern. "Still doing those little drawings on your computer? Isn't it time you got a real job, something with benefits and a pension?" She'd then turn to my cousin, David, a newly minted corporate lawyer, and praise his ambition and sensible choices, a thinly veiled jab at my own path. My parents, sadly, often enabled Carol's behavior, or at least failed to counter it. They were proud of my artistic talent in a superficial way, admiring my creative flair, but they secretly agreed with Carol's assessment that my career was risky and unstable. They endlessly compared me to David, their favorite nephew, who was everything they wished I was: traditional, successful by society's standards, and financially predictable. "David has such a sensible head on his shoulders," my mother would sigh, whenever I talked about a new freelance project. "He just gets it." The worst part of Carol's constant undermining was her ability to twist reality. She was a master of the backhanded compliment, the concerned query that was actually a thinly veiled insult. She'd spread rumors about my struggles or my reckless financial decisions, even though I was meticulously responsible, always living within my means and consistently saving. I remembered one instance vividly. I had just purchased my first apartment, a small, charming space in a bustling part of the city. I was incredibly proud. I had saved every penny, worked tirelessly to make the down payment. My parents offered polite congratulations, but Carol, upon visiting, immediately started pointing out its flaws to anyone who would listen. "It's so tiny in that neighborhood. Darling, is it really safe, I mean? For a single girl like Lily, living all alone, she should be thinking about something grander, something that reflects potential." Her whispers implied that my independence was a sign of loneliness or desperation, not strength. Her deep-seated resentment, however, stemmed primarily from her relationship with Grandma Alara. Grandma was sharp, insightful, and saw through people's facades instantly. She cherished authenticity and hard work. She knew Carol for exactly what she was: a shallow, envious woman who constantly sought external validation and yearned for inherited wealth rather than earning her own. Grandma, conversely, had an undeniable fondness for me. She was my biggest champion, my quiet ally. She never publicly favored me to avoid family drama, but her actions spoke volumes. When my parents dismissed my digital art as just a hobby, Grandma commissioned me to design the new logo for her gallery, insisting on paying me a professional fee. She took genuine interest in my projects, asking insightful questions about my creative process and my business strategy. She valued my intellect, my artistic vision, and my quiet determination. "Lily," she told me countless times, as we worked quietly side by side in her cluttered study, "talent is like a garden. It needs nurturing but integrity. That's the soil, and yours, my dear, is rich and deep." Don't let anyone poison it with their weeds of doubt and envy. In her later years, when Grandma's health began to decline, Carol saw it as her opportunity. She started visiting Grandma more frequently, not out of genuine concern, but with thinly veiled ulterior motives. She'd bring expensive, but impersonal, gifts, and launch into saccharine monologues about her devotion and her sacrifices for family. She'd subtly try to manipulate Grandma, dropping hints about her own financial struggles and Grandma's generosity. She even tried to convince Grandma to change her will, suggesting that as the oldest and most responsible niece, she should be given control of Grandma's modest, but significant, estate. I, meanwhile, continued my quiet visits, bringing Grandma her favorite homemade soup, reading to her, or simply holding her hand. I never spoke about money, never hinted at my own financial needs. My focus was on providing comfort and companionship, a genuine love that contrasted starkly with Carol's performative affection. Grandma, sharp as ever, saw it all. She would listen to Carol's pleas with a knowing glint in her eye, offering only vague reassurances or polite deflections. The final straw for me, before the funeral, was a phone call from Carol a few weeks before Grandma passed. "Lily," she'd said, her voice unusually sweet, "I heard you're helping Grandma sort out some of her paperwork. Just make sure you're being honest. Dear, Grandma can be a little forgetful these days, and we wouldn't want anyone taking advantage of her." The implication was clear. She thought I was trying to swindle Grandma. The accusation stung, raw and unjust. I merely replied, "Grandma is perfectly lucid, Carol, and I'm always honest. Perhaps you should try it sometime." I hung up, my hands trembling with suppressed fury. Now, sitting in the funeral home, listening to Mr. Thompson read Grandma's pointed letter, it all made sense. Every word was a response to years of this insidious behavior. Grandma hadn't been fooled. She had been observing, listening, and carefully, meticulously, planning her final act of justice. Mr. Thompson, after the damning general address, began to read the specific bequests. There were small sums for various charities and distant cousins. As was expected, my parents received a modest sum, along with a few family heirlooms. My mother's face registered a subtle disappointment. She had clearly hoped for more. Then came the surprising part. Mr. Thompson read a series of clauses that were not direct monetary gifts, but rather conditions. To Uncle Robert, a distant relative known for his gambling debts, Grandma left a small sum, contingent on him attending a financial literacy course and providing proof of steady employment for a year. To Aunt Susan, who often boasted about her investments, but rarely seemed to make any money, she left a portfolio of highly conservative, low-yield bonds, with a note for safekeeping and a lesson in patience. The family murmured, bewildered. These were not the straightforward cash payouts they had anticipated. Carol, however, sat with a smug smile, clearly assuming these were just minor detours before her grand inheritance. She was waiting for the big one, the one that would signify her triumph over me. She shot me another condescending glance, as if to say, "Your turn to be disappointed, Lily." Then, Mr. Thompson's voice resonated through the room again. "And now, to my niece, Carol Vance." Carol sat bolt upright, her eyes gleaming with avarice. This was it, her moment. "To Carol," Mr. Thompson read, his voice clear and unwavering, "I bequeath my collection of costume jewelry, some of which she admired greatly, and a sum of $10,000, to be used for her annual spa retreat, which I know she enjoys so much." The air in the room seemed to evaporate. $10,000 and costume jewelry. Not the multi-million-dollar estate she had been so eagerly anticipating. Chloe's face, once beaming with self-satisfaction, now crumpled in a mixture of disbelief and utter humiliation. "What?" she shrieked, jumping half out of her seat. "Costume jewelry? And that's it. This is a joke. This is an insult. I was her favorite niece. I visited her constantly." My mother, equally stunned, gasped, "Ilara? How could you?" Carol was so devoted. Mr. Thompson, however, remained completely unperturbed. He calmly picked up another document. "And Mrs. Vance included a personal note for you, Carol." He paused, his gaze fixed on my aunt. "It reads, 'To Carol.'" I hope these trinkets bring you as much superficial joy as the thought of my passing brought you. And the spa money is a final gift for self-care, as I suspect you will need it more than ever now, in accepting the truth about yourself." The room erupted in stunned gasps. Carol's face turned a mottled shade of red, her eyes bulging with fury and mortification. Her attempts at public humiliation of me had just backfired spectacularly. Grandma, from beyond the grave, had delivered the ultimate public dressing down. It was brutal, poetic, and utterly, undeniably just. My heart pounded with a mix of shock and a profound, quiet vindication. Grandma had not only seen through Carol's lies, she had weaponized her own will to expose them. And I, the maligned, the overlooked, the opportunistic granddaughter, was about to find out what, if anything, she had left for me. The atmosphere was thick with outrage and disbelief, setting the stage for the ultimate twist. If you've ever yearned for the moment where karmic justice is served in the most spectacular way, hit that like and subscribe button, because what happens next will absolutely stun you. The stunned silence that followed Mr. Thompson's reading of Grandma Alara's letter and Aunt Carol's paltry inheritance was a rare and beautiful thing. Carol, my aunt, sat rigid, her face a grotesque mask of fury and mortification. The collective gasp from the rest of the family was quickly followed by hushed whispers, a cacophony of confusion and barely concealed schadenfreude. Grandma, even in death, had orchestrated the most exquisite public dressing down. If you've ever witnessed a moment where someone's carefully constructed facade shatters, it's both uncomfortable and undeniably compelling. Carol's smug triumph had been brutally dismantled, replaced by raw, exposed humiliation. My mother, usually so aligned with her sister, looked utterly bewildered, unable to reconcile this public rebuke with her idealized image of her family. Mr. Thompson, unmoved by the dramatic fallout, simply cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping over the room. That concludes Mrs. Vance's personal message and the specific bequest to Carol. He then calmly picked up another section of the will. The air, still thick with tension, now thrummed with a new kind of anticipation what was left, and to whom. My heart pounded. After that bombshell, after witnessing Carol's spectacular downfall, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was a quiet satisfaction, a sense of justice being served after years of my aunt's cruelty. But there was also a lingering uncertainty about my own fate. Grandma had been fiercely independent, a woman who believed in earning your way. Would her inheritance simply acknowledge my own self-sufficiency? Or was there something more? I remembered Grandma's wry smile, her subtle nudges for me to stand up for myself. She often told me, "Lily, you have a backbone stronger than you know. Don't let anyone bend it for their convenience." She had seen my quiet nature not as a weakness, but as a deep well of observation and resilience. She encouraged my analytical mind, always asking insightful questions about my graphic design projects, far more so than my own parents ever did. They only cared about how much money it would make, or if it was respectable enough. Grandma cared about the craft, the creativity, the impact. "Now we move on to the remaining substantial assets of Mrs. Vance's estate," Mr. Thompson announced, his voice drawing everyone back to attention. Chloe, though still seething from her own humiliation, straightened up, her eyes still holding a spark of greedy hope. My parents, looking increasingly bewildered, leaned forward. Mr. Thompson proceeded to read a series of provisions related to various financial accounts, investments, and a small, but valuable, portfolio of real estate properties. He detailed their distribution to several distant relatives and charities. Each time a name was read, there was a collective sigh of quiet disappointment from my immediate family. The large sums, the big properties, they were being dispersed, but not to them. "To my beloved son, Thomas," Mr. Thompson read, referring to my father, "I bequeath a sum of $500,000 to be placed in a charitable trust for the benefit of local art education programs, a cause I know he implicitly supports through his good nature and community involvement." My father blinked. $500,000, yes, but tied to charity. His face showed a mixture of pride in the charitable cause and a subtle, disappointed understanding that this wasn't liquid cash for him. My mother's lips thinned. "And to my daughter, Clara," Mr. Thompson continued, addressing my mother directly. "I leave my collection of antique porcelain dolls. I know she always admired their delicate beauty." My mother's eyes widened, then narrowed. Antique porcelain dolls. A beautiful, yet utterly impractical collection. She loved expensive things. Yes, but only if they had tangible, exchangeable value. A collection of dolls, while valuable to a collector, was not exactly the vast sum of money she had hoped for to maintain her social climbing lifestyle. The collective irony in the room was almost palpable. It was clear that Grandma had carefully considered each bequest, not just for its monetary value, but for its symbolic weight, its subtle commentary on each family member's character and values. She was ensuring her legacy reflected her principles, not merely their greed. The tension in the room was nearing its peak. Most of the smaller bequests had been read. Chloe was practically vibrating with a desperate hope, her eyes darting between Mr. Thompson and the remaining stack of papers. Surely, the main inheritance, the jewel in Grandma's crown, her primary art gallery, Vance Art and Design, must be coming now. She had long envisioned herself taking over the gallery, not out of any genuine passion for art, but as a glamorous, high society pursuit that would give her the status she craved. She had often talked about modernizing Grandma's quaint gallery, turning it into some exclusive, high-priced boutique that would cater only to the ultra-rich, completely missing the essence of Grandma's mission to make art accessible. "Finally," Mr. Thompson said, his voice gaining a solemnity that commanded absolute silence. "We come to the centerpiece of Mrs. Vance's estate, her beloved Vance Art and Design Gallery, along with its extensive art collection, properties, and all associated intellectual property and financial assets." Chloe's chest visibly swelled. Her eyes gleamed with a predatory light. This was it, her moment. She even shot me a quick, triumphant glance, a silent declaration of victory. "See? Lily Grandma knows who the real heir is. All your little attempts to undermine me failed." But then, Mr. Thompson paused, his gaze sweeping over the room once more, before settling firmly on me. My breath hitched. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but it was not of fear. It was of a dawning, terrifying, exhilarating realization. "It was Mrs. Vance's deepest wish," Mr. Thompson began, his voice clear and resonant, "that her life's work, Vance Art and Design, be entrusted to an individual who possesses not only a keen intellect and a strong business sense, but also a genuine passion for art, an unwavering commitment to integrity, and the innovative vision to carry her legacy forward into the future." He took a deliberate pause, letting the words hang in the air, letting the family's anticipation reach a fever pitch. Chloe leaned forward, her face etched with eager expectation. "Therefore," Mr. Thompson continued, his gaze still fixed on me, "it is with great honor that I announce that Mrs. Alara Vance has bequeathed full, controlling ownership and immediate management of Vance Art and Design, along with all its extensive assets, to her beloved granddaughter, Lily Vance." The air in the room seemed to explode. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled family. Chloe's triumphant smile froze, then slowly, horrifyingly, crumpled. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, locked onto mine, filled with a raw, agonizing mixture of shock, fury, and utter defeat. My mother gasped, a guttural sound of pure, unadulterated shock. My father's jaw dropped. Aunt Carol, who had been smugly watching Chloe, now looked like she'd been struck by lightning, her face paling to an ashen gray. Me, the gallery, the entire, thriving business, not just a small sum, not just a token, but the entire legacy, the central pillar of Grandma's life, entrusted to me, the freelance artist, the irresponsible one, the one always in Chloe's shadow. My mind reeled. It was impossible. It was audacious. It was Grandma. Mr. Thompson, ever the master of dramatic timing, then picked up another document. "And Mrs. Vance has also included a personal message for Lily." His voice softened, tinged with a warmth that had been absent from the previous readings. He put on his glasses again, and began to read Grandma's words directly to me. To my dearest Lily, if you are hearing this, know that my faith in you has always been unwavering. I have watched you, quietly, diligently, building your own path, facing challenges with grace and integrity. Your quiet strength, your discerning eye, and your true passion for creativity are qualities that I cherished, and qualities that I know will ensure Vance Art and Design not only thrives, but evolves. This is not just a gift, my dear, it is a trust, a legacy. My belief in your ability to carry my vision forward is absolute. Now, spread your wings, my Lily, the gallery, and the world are yours. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unstoppable. Not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude, of profound validation. Grandma had seen me, she had truly seen me, and she had given me the ultimate gift, not just wealth, but a purpose, a platform, and an undeniable affirmation of my worth, strategically designed to empower me and dismantle the very narratives my family had built around me. The room was in an uproar. Chloe was on her feet, screaming, "This is a fraud. This is insane. She manipulated her. Lily manipulated Grandma. She's nothing but a greedy snake." My mother, regaining some of her composure, joined in the furious protest. "Mr. Thompson, this is outrageous. Lily knows nothing about running a business. She's just a freelance artist. She'll run it into the ground." Mr. Thompson calmly raised a hand, his voice cutting through the rising clamor. "Ladies, Mrs. Vance's will is ironclad. She took every precaution, and as for Lily's capabilities, Mrs. Vance meticulously documented Lily's involvement and training in the gallery's operations over the past several years, specifically noting her sharp analytical skills, her innovative thinking, and her deep understanding of the art market beyond conventional wisdom. She believed Lily was the only one capable of truly leading the galleries into the future. His words, Grandma's words, were a double-edged sword. They validated me completely, but they also delivered a final, devastating blow to Chloe and my mother. The idea that Grandma had been secretly training me, the overlooked one, while they were busy trying to manipulate her, was the ultimate humiliation. Chloe stood there, trembling with rage, tears of fury streaming down her face. Her dreams of inherited grandeur, of effortless status, had shattered into a million pieces. The nasty rumors she spread about me at the funeral had just been turned into a public spectacle of her own undoing. And I, the quiet, dismissed Lily, stood in the center of it all, not just victorious, but empowered beyond anything I had ever imagined. The ultimate twist had been revealed, and it was glorious. The aftermath of the will reading was a scene of utter chaos, a storm of shattered expectations and raw, exposed greed. Chloe's screams echoed in Mr. Thompson's usually tranquil office, punctuated by my mother's frantic attempts to defend her. "This is an outrage. A fraud. Lily knows nothing about business. She's a freelance artist," my mother wailed, as if my profession were a terminal illness. If you've ever watched a carefully constructed facade crumble, it's a grimly fascinating spectacle. Chloe's furious tears were real, but they were born of entitlement, not grief. My mother's indignation stemmed from her own perceived loss of social standing, a disruption to her meticulously crafted image of family prosperity. And through it all, Mr. Thompson, Grandma's lawyer, stood like a rock, his calm demeanor an antidote to their hysteria. "As I have repeatedly stated, Mrs. Vance," Mr. Thompson announced, his voice cutting through the clamor, "Mrs. Elara Vance's will is legally sound and meticulously prepared. Her wishes are clear, unambiguous, and fully documented." He then looked directly at me, a subtle nod of encouragement passing between us. "Lily, perhaps you would like to begin the transition process at Vance Art and Design at your earliest convenience." My heart pounded with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Vance Art and Design, Grandma's legacy, my responsibility. "Yes, Mr. Thompson," I managed, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I'll be there first thing tomorrow morning." Chloe let out a fresh shriek. "Tomorrow she's just going to waltz in and take over. This is despicable. I'm calling my lawyer. We're contesting this." "You are, of course, within your rights." "Miss Vance," Mr. Thompson replied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. However, as previously advised, Mrs. Vance took extraordinary measures to ensure the validity of this will. Any challenge would be lengthy, costly, and ultimately fruitless. His words were like a cold bucket of water on Chloe's fiery outrage. The word costly seemed to deflate her instantly. My mother, however, persisted. But what about Lily's experience? She's never run a business of this scale. She's an engineer, not an art dealer. Her disdain for my actual profession was a constant, grating refrain. On the contrary, Mrs. Vance, Mr. Thompson stated, a hint of steel in his voice. Mrs. Alara Vance personally ensured that Lily was comprehensively prepared. Their discussions over the past several years were, in essence, a sophisticated mentorship. Lily's analytical skills, her innovative thinking, and her deep understanding of the art market beyond conventional wisdom were all factors Mrs. Vance considered essential for the gallery's future. His words, echoing Grandma's own sentiments, were the ultimate validation. Grandma had played the long game. She had seen through Chloe's performative affection and my mother's shallow materialism. She had seen my quiet diligence, my genuine love for art, and my inherent business acumen. While they were busy calculating their inheritance, Grandma was quietly, meticulously preparing me to inherit her life's work. I left the lawyer's office feeling both overwhelmed and strangely empowered. The insults and accusations still stung, but they no longer chipped away at my core. They were just noise, background static against the undeniable truth of Grandma's trust. I hailed a cab, leaving my sputtering, defeated family behind in the wake of Mr. Thompson's legal pronouncements. The next morning, I arrived at Vance Art and Design. The flagship gallery was a magnificent building, a blend of classic architecture and modern interior design, located in the heart of the city's upscale arts district. Walking through its grand entrance, I felt a mixture of profound reverence for Grandma's legacy and a daunting sense of responsibility. This wasn't just a building, it was a living, breathing entity, filled with decades of history, countless masterpieces, and a dedicated team. The staff, many of whom had been with the galleries for decades, greeted me with cautious respect. They knew about the will, of course. News travels fast in a family like mine, and even faster in the close-knit art world. I gathered everyone in the main exhibition hall, the high ceilings and grand spaces a subtle reminder of the legacy I was now entrusted with. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady, though my heart pounded. "My name is Lily Vance, and as you know, I am now the owner and CEO of Vance Art and Design. I know this is a significant change, and I want to acknowledge the uncertainty many of you might be feeling." I then spoke from the heart, pouring out my genuine respect for Grandma, for the gallery, and for their collective expertise. My grandmother, Alara Vance, built this institution with vision, passion, and immense hard work. She trusted me with her legacy, not because I'm an artist, or a lawyer, or a socialite. I subtly glanced at the memory of my family's snide remarks, but because she believed in my ability to lead, to innovate, and to honor the true spirit of what she created, a place where art connects with people, where talent is nurtured, and where beauty is celebrated. My goal is not to reinvent the wheel, but to build upon Grandma's incredible foundation. I am here to learn from each of you, to collaborate, and to ensure that Vance Art and Design not only continues to thrive, but reaches new heights. I opened the floor for questions, and they came, tentative at first, then more confident. Questions about my vision, my experience, my plans for the future. I answered each one honestly, drawing on my architectural background's emphasis on strategic planning, project management, and problem solving. I talked about my ideas for digital expansion, for new artist residency programs, for community outreach, initiatives that balanced commercial viability with artistic integrity. Their skepticism slowly began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism. They saw my dedication, my genuine desire to learn, and my profound respect for Grandma's vision. The first few months were a whirlwind. I immersed myself in every facet of the gallery's operations. I spent hours with Mr. Harrison, the head curator, a distinguished man with an encyclopedic knowledge of art history and a deep loyalty to Grandma. He taught me the nuances of curation, the complexities of art acquisition, and the subtle politics of the art world. I shadowed the finance team, delving into budgets, sales figures, and market trends. I even spent time with the gallery attendants and security staff, learning about their daily routines, their interactions with visitors, and their insights into the gallery's flow. My background as a freelance graphic designer proved invaluable in unexpected ways. I understood branding, visual communication, and the power of digital platforms. I immediately saw opportunities to modernize the gallery's online presence, to create engaging digital content, and to leverage social media to reach a wider, younger audience. I launched a new website with an interactive virtual tour feature and developed a vibrant social media strategy that brought the art to life for millions online. Meanwhile, Chloe and my mother continued their campaign of subtle sabotage and public denigration. They called distant relatives, spreading new rumors about my reckless management decisions and my supposed imminent downfall. They even contacted some of Grandma's longtime collectors, trying to sow doubt about my ability to run the galleries. But their efforts were increasingly futile. The gallery's success spoke for itself. Sales were up. Attendance records were being broken. The art community was buzzing with praise for our innovative new exhibitions and programs. Each positive news article, each glowing review, was a direct refutation of their malicious whispers. My mother, ever obsessed with public perception, began to shift her tone, ever so subtly. She'd call, not to criticize, but to offer backhanded compliments. "Lily, darling, I heard the gallery is doing so well. It must be all those digital things you do. Very modern, of course. Eleanor always said you were good with technology, didn't she? It runs in the family." Her attempts to claim credit for my success, or to attribute it to some inherited trait from her side of the family, were almost comical. "Yes, Mom," I'd calmly respond. Grandma was very forward-thinking, and I'm applying those principles every day. I learned to maintain a polite, professional distance, refusing to let her hooks sink back into me. My personal conversations with her remained brief and superficial, strictly avoiding any topics that could lead to manipulation or judgment. Chloe, however, remained stubbornly entrenched in her bitterness. Her envy was a corrosive force, eating away at her from the inside. She saw my success as a constant reminder of her own perceived failure, her own lack of genuine achievement. She would occasionally try to show up at the gallery, unannounced, attempting to charm visitors or offer unsolicited advice to the staff. One afternoon, I walked into the contemporary art wing to find Chloe holding court in front of a particularly challenging installation piece. She was pontificating loudly to a small group of visitors, misinterpreting the artist's intent and offering simplistic, cliched analyses. She was dressed impeccably, as always, but her words were hollow, revealing a superficial understanding of art. "Chloe," I said, walking up to her, my voice calm but firm. "What exactly are you doing?" She spun around, startled, her face flushing. "Lily, oh, just helping out. These lovely people were curious about this piece, and I was just sharing some insights." She gestured vaguely. "I appreciate the enthusiasm," I replied, my voice low enough so only she could truly hear the bite in my tone. "But this is a professional institution, Chloe, and accurately representing the artists and their work is paramount. This piece, for example, is a commentary on post-industrial decay, not just colorful shapes to brighten a room, as you just told that couple." Her face twisted in a mixture of embarrassment and fury. "Well, I'm not some nerdy art historian. Lily, I'm just relating to people on their level." "No," I countered, my gaze unwavering. "You're misrepresenting the gallery and the artist, and that is unacceptable. You are not an employee of Vance Art and Design, nor are you authorized to speak on its behalf. If you wish to visit as a guest, you are welcome. But if you attempt to interfere with operations or misrepresent yourself again, I will have security escort you out. Is that clear?" Her jaw dropped. She looked utterly stunned, completely disarmed by my directness and authority. She had never seen me speak with such unyielding resolve. She muttered something inaudible, her face contorted. And then, without another word, she turned and stormed out of the gallery, leaving a trail of furious silence behind her. That confrontation, though brief, was incredibly powerful for me. It was the moment I fully stepped into my power, not just as the CEO of Vance Art and Design, but as Lily, a woman who would no longer tolerate disrespect or manipulation. I wasn't just managing a business, I was managing my boundaries, protecting my peace, and asserting my authority in every facet of my life. The nasty rumors my aunt spread about me at a funeral had ignited a fire, and that fire was now burning brightly, illuminating my path and scorching those who tried to stand in my way. The confrontation with Chloe in the contemporary art wing was a pivotal moment. It wasn't just another petty squabble. It was a public declaration of my authority, delivered calmly but with undeniable force. Her furious retreat from the gallery, a sputtering mess of humiliated rage, was a testament to the fact that she finally understood her power over me was gone. My confidence, forged in the crucible of Grandma's trust and my own hard work, was now an unyielding shield. If you've ever had that moment of ultimate mic drop, where all the years of quiet suffering culminate in one decisive, undeniable act, you know the feeling. It was a profound liberation. The air in the gallery seemed to hum with a new energy, a palpable sense of peace that had been absent for so long. The staff, who had witnessed the exchange, looked at me with a newfound respect, their eyes reflecting approval and, perhaps, a little awe. With the legal challenges behind me and my boundaries firmly established, I was able to pour every ounce of my energy into Vance Art and Design. The gallery was no longer just an inheritance. It was my canvas, my grand project. I expanded the Young Artists Initiative, establishing scholarships and mentorship programs that genuinely launched careers. I invested in state-of-the-art climate control systems to better preserve our priceless collection and digitized more of Grandma's extensive archives, making them accessible to scholars worldwide. My innate analytical skills, combined with my love for creative problem-solving, proved to be an unstoppable force. I spearheaded a major renovation of the gallery's main exhibition space, blending modern design elements with its historic charm. I curated groundbreaking exhibitions that challenged conventional notions of art. Drawing in new audiences and garnering critical acclaim, the galleries flourished, both financially and culturally, becoming a true beacon in the art world. The success, however, brought a new kind of scrutiny, not from my family, whose influence was waning, but from the broader art community. My rapid rise, my unconventional background, and my bold decisions drew attention. Most of it was positive, but there were whispers, too. Echoes of Chloe's old rumors. She's too young. She's too aggressive. She's just lucky. But these external criticisms, unlike those from my family, felt distant, almost impersonal. I had developed a thick skin, a quiet confidence that allowed me to dismiss noise and focus on impact. My relationship with my mother became a careful dance of polite distance. She would call, her tone a mix of grudging admiration and a persistent need to connect herself to my success. "Lily, darling, I heard you're doing wonders with the galleries." Of course. Eleanor always had a good head for business. Didn't she? Runs in the family. It was her way of trying to claim credit, to insert herself into the narrative of my achievements. "Yes, Mom," I'd respond, my voice calm but firm. Grandma was truly visionary, and I'm committed to honoring her legacy. I maintained strict boundaries, keeping our conversations brief and focused on superficial topics. I rarely shared details of my personal life or professional challenges, knowing they would either be dismissed or used as leverage. The emotional distance, once a source of pain, was now a protective shield, preserving my peace. Chloe, however, found herself increasingly isolated. Her social media, once a vibrant stream of carefully curated luxury, began to feature more frequent, vaguely resentful posts about family drama and unjust situations. Her various ventures continued to fail, and the well of parental financial support, once seemingly endless, began to run dry. My parents, having witnessed my undeniable success and Chloe's perpetual irresponsibility, were slowly, finally, shifting their focus. I learned that Chloe was now actively trying to leverage her family connection to Vance Art and Design for her own benefit. She approached some of our lower-tier vendors, claiming to be working closely with Lily and attempting to secure discounts or even free services for her own personal projects. Our staff, loyal and well aware of the situation, immediately reported these attempts. This was a calculated move on Chloe's part, a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of relevance and access to the wealth she believed was rightfully hers. It was a clear violation of the boundaries I had established, a blatant act of continued manipulation, and it demanded a direct, undeniable response. I consulted with Mr. Thompson, Grandma's lawyer, who had now become my trusted legal advisor. He listened calmly as I detailed Chloe's actions. "This is a direct infringement, Lily," he stated, his voice firm, "and it directly contradicts Mrs. Ilara Vance's express wishes regarding the management and integrity of the galleries. We must act decisively." We drafted a formal cease and desist letter, detailing Chloe's unauthorized use of the Vance Art and Design name and her attempts to misrepresent her affiliation. The letter was stern, legally precise, and left no room for ambiguity. It warned of legal action if the behavior continued. But I knew a letter alone wouldn't be enough for Chloe. She needed a public, undeniable consequence. She needed to be exposed, not just to the family, but to the broader community she so desperately tried to impress. The opportunity presented itself unexpectedly. Vance Art and Design was hosting its annual gala, a glittering event that drew prominent collectors, artists, and socialites from across the city. It was a meticulously planned evening, a celebration of art and a major fundraising event. Chloe, surprisingly, had managed to secure an invitation through a distant family friend, likely hoping to network, or perhaps to cause a scene. I saw her almost immediately upon her arrival. She was impeccably dressed, chatting animatedly with a small group of guests, clearly trying to project an air of importance. She occasionally glanced in my direction, a defiant glint in her eye. She was ready for a confrontation, hoping to draw me into a public argument that would somehow discredit me. I, however, had a different plan. I moved through the gala, greeting guests, engaging in conversations, exuding confidence and grace. I waited for the right moment, for the perfect alignment of witnesses and context. The moment came during the main address of the evening. I stood on the stage, in the magnificent grand hall of the gallery, addressing hundreds of influential guests. I spoke about Grandma's vision, about the gallery's achievements, and about our ambitious plans for the future. The applause was warm, genuine, and deeply satisfying. As I was about to conclude, I saw Chloe, positioned prominently near the front, trying to catch my eye, a smug, expectant look on her face. She was clearly anticipating some form of acknowledgement, perhaps a subtle dig, or an opportunity to interject. I took a deep breath, and then, my voice clear and resonating through the hall, I added a statement that wasn't on the prepared script. "Before I conclude," I said, my gaze sweeping over the audience, "I want to take a moment to address a matter of vital importance to the integrity of Vance Art and Design. As many of you know, this institution was built on a foundation of trust, honesty, and genuine passion for art. It is a legacy I am fiercely committed to upholding." I paused, letting my words sink in. Chloe's confident smirk wavered. "Unfortunately," I continued, my voice softening slightly, but gaining an undeniable firmness, "it has come to my attention that certain individuals have been attempting to misrepresent their affiliation with Vance Art and Design, leveraging its reputation for personal gain and offering unauthorized services or advice. This behavior is unethical, unprofessional, and a direct affront to everything my grandmother stood for." I looked directly at Chloe, my gaze unwavering. Her face went pale, the color drained from her cheeks, and her jaw slowly began to drop. "I want to make it unequivocally clear," I stated, my voice now cold and resolute, "that only authorized employees and designated representatives are permitted to act on behalf of Vance Art and Design. Any individual found engaging in such unauthorized and deceptive practices will be met with swift and decisive legal action. This institution, its artists, and its patrons deserve nothing less than absolute transparency and integrity." The applause that followed was not just for the gala, it was for the clear, undeniable declaration of authority. The message was unmistakable. The consequences were public. Chloe, standing in the front row, amidst the city's most influential people, was utterly, spectacularly exposed. Her face crumpled, a mixture of shock, fury, and abject humiliation. She looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. She tried to slip away, but too many eyes were on her. The whispers began. Not about me, but about her. A ripple of judgment spreading through the elegant crowd. This was the ultimate confrontation. Not a shouted argument, but a quiet, powerful assertion of truth and boundaries. The nasty rumors my aunt spread about me at a funeral had led to this moment. A moment where the deceased's will had not only been read aloud, but its spirit of justice had been carried forward. Exposing hypocrisy and solidifying my rightful place, I concluded my speech, the applause ringing in my ears. I felt no malice, only a profound sense of peace and vindication. Chloe's attempts to steal my inheritance, to tarnish my reputation, had ultimately led to her own public undoing, and I, the once overlooked Lily, stood tall, empowered, and unequivocally in control of my legacy and my life. The battle was won, and the future stretched out, bright and unburdened. The public humiliation of Chloe at the Vance Art and Design Gala reverberated throughout our family and the broader social circles for weeks. It was an undeniable, irrefutable act of exposure, meticulously executed. Chloe, who had always thrived on outward appearances and social status, was now a pariah. Her attempts to leverage the gallery's name for personal gain brought to light in the most public way possible. If you've ever seen someone's social standing crumble, it's a stark reminder of the fragility of reputation built on deceit. Her phone calls to distant relatives, once filled with her melodious whispers of gossip, now likely echoed with the painful silence of uncomfortable avoidance. Her carefully curated social media posts became fewer. Her tone increasingly bitter and self-pitying. She was still attempting to spin her narrative, portraying herself as the victim of my vindictive nature. But the facts, and the undeniable success of the galleries, spoke louder than any of her lies. My focus, however, was not on Chloe's downfall, but on the continued ascent of Vance Art and Design and my own journey of healing. The legal battles and personal confrontations had, ironically, sharpened my resolve and clarified my purpose. The gallery was flourishing. My Young Artists Initiative was nurturing genuinely talented individuals, giving them a platform they otherwise wouldn't have had. Our community outreach programs were bringing art education to underserved areas, fulfilling Grandma's quiet dream of making art accessible to everyone. I dedicated myself to the work, finding immense satisfaction in the tangible impact I was making. My analytical skills, once dismissed as nerdy, proved invaluable in strategic planning, financial management, and even in curating exhibitions that resonated deeply with a diverse audience. My background as a graphic designer allowed me to revitalize the gallery's brand, making it feel both timeless and contemporary. I was working harder than ever, but it was a fulfilling, exhilarating kind of hard work, fueled by passion and purpose, not by a desperate need for external validation. My relationship with my mother continued to be a careful dance of polite distance. She would still call occasionally, her voice tinged with a hesitant deference she had never shown before. The tone of her compliments had shifted from backhanded to almost genuine, though always with a subtle attempt to connect herself to my achievements. "Lily, darling, I heard the new exhibit is just breathtaking. You have such a flair for it. Of course, you get that from my side of the family, you know?" "Yes, Mom," I would respond, calmly. Grandma was a true visionary, and I'm honored to carry on her legacy. I maintained my strict boundaries, keeping conversations brief and focused on superficial topics. I never shared details of my personal life or any professional challenges, knowing that any vulnerability might be exploited or dismissed. The emotional distance was not a punishment, but a necessary act of self-preservation, preserving the peace I had finally found. My father, on the other hand, began to surprise me. He called me more frequently, not to mediate or criticize, but to express genuine interest in the galleries. He would ask insightful questions about market trends, about the artists, about my vision for the future. He even started visiting the galleries regularly, sometimes just sitting quietly on a bench, observing the visitors, a thoughtful look on his face. He seemed to be seeing the world, and me, with new eyes. One afternoon, he came to my office at the gallery. He looked tired, but his eyes held a softness I rarely saw. "Lily," he began, his voice a little hoarse, "I wanted to tell you what you've done with the galleries. It's truly remarkable. Your grandmother would be so proud." He paused, taking a deep breath. "And I'm proud of you too, Lily. More than you know." Tears welled in my eyes. It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of years of unspoken longing, of a lifetime of seeking his approval. It was a genuine acknowledgement, free from any conditions or comparisons. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He nodded, then looked out the window at the bustling city below. "Your grandmother," he continued, a wistful look on his face. "She always said you had a quiet strength, that you saw things others missed. I see it now. I'm sorry, Lily, for not seeing it sooner, for not standing up for you more." His apology was not forced, not transactional. It was a genuine expression of regret, born from his own journey of reflection. In that moment, a new, fragile path opened between us, a path built on honesty and authentic respect, free from the toxic influence of my mother and Chloe. It wasn't a complete reconciliation with the entire family, but it was a profound healing for a relationship I truly valued. The relationship with Chloe remained estranged. Her envy was too deep, too corrosive. She continued to lash out sporadically on social media, making vague, self-pitying remarks about karma and unjust family situations. But her words had lost all power. Her attempts to infiltrate the art community or leverage her family name were met with polite but firm rejection. Thanks to the groundwork I had laid and the clear communication from Mr. Thompson and my team, she remained trapped in her own self-imposed prison of resentment. While my life soared, my own life blossomed with a profound sense of purpose and peace. I found love again, a quiet, supportive relationship built on shared values and mutual respect. I cultivated a strong, chosen family of friends and colleagues who celebrated my authentic self, who lifted me up, and who provided the unconditional love and acceptance I had always craved. The most profound lesson I learned from this entire ordeal was about true inheritance. Grandma Alara didn't just leave me money or a business. She left me a legacy of trust, a profound belief in my capabilities, and a platform to discover my own strength. She had seen through the surface, past the superficial judgments, and recognized the true worth within me. Her will was not just a legal document. It was a final, strategic act of love, designed to empower me and to expose the toxic dynamics that had plagued my family for decades. I often thought about that day at the funeral, about Aunt Carol spreading nasty rumors about me, trying to tarnish my name. It was painful then, humiliating, but in retrospect, it was the catalyst. It pushed me to my breaking point, forcing me to confront the injustice and to rise above it. The deceased's will, read aloud, wasn't just a revelation of assets. It was a dramatic unveiling of truth, a powerful act of karmic justice that resonated far beyond the confines of that room. The girl who was once dismissed as too quiet, too sensitive, and irresponsible had become a visionary leader, a successful entrepreneur, and, most importantly, a woman who knew her own worth, independent of anyone else's opinion. I owned my business, I owned my relationships, and most importantly, I owned my life, and that, truly, was the most precious inheritance of all. If you've ever felt underestimated, unfairly judged, or found yourself in the crosshairs of family toxicity, I hope my story empowers you. Remember, your worth is inherent, not defined by others. Your quiet strength can be your greatest power. And sometimes, the most profound acts of healing involve setting clear boundaries and choosing your own peace. Hit that like and subscribe button if my story resonated with you. Drop your own experiences with finding your voice and reclaiming your narrative in the comments below. Your journey can inspire countless others. And remember, the truest legacies are built not on wealth alone, but on integrity, purpose, and the courage to live authentically.